Welcome, fellow seekers, to another episode of Primal Matters. This is a place where we discuss topics related to spirituality and relationships that nurture the heart, the mind, and the soul. Today I'm happy to have my good friend Steve Hart back with me to talk about an issue that I find that many people seem to struggle with, especially in intimate relationships. It has to do with emotional mastery, our ability to sit with big feelings whenever we get triggered by someone special in our lives. Oftentimes, this triggering is quite unconscious. Someone may say or do something that instantly causes us to knee-jerk or react. And if we're not mindful or skilled in being able to settle down in those moments, we can be easily swept away into a torrent of reactivity and emotional pain. These are things that are rooted in childhood traumas or past disappointments. These kinds of triggering events may even cause us to lash out at our friends, our children, our coworkers, and worst of all, our beloved partners. So in this talk, Steve shares some insights and how he has learned to navigate these kinds of turbulent waters in his own relationship. So sit back and listen as we discuss the journey of emotional mastery, and we will cut through the traps that tend to sabotage our connections with others, here on Primal Matters.
So this topic of sitting with big feelings rather than being emotionally reactive is such an interesting one, because I stumbled into it by being emotionally reactive, and then my partner, who was new at the time, picked up on that, and she gave me some feedback that has been really invaluable. And what she highlighted to me is that when I say these things because I've had a concerning feeling come up, or I've been triggered or something along those lines, and I just want to offload it onto her, she said, that just makes me feel shit. And there's not really any benefit. And I thought about that, and I sat with that for a little bit, and I thought, you know what? This comes from having big feelings as a child and having it either getting in trouble for having having a meltdown, or getting angry, or crying, or something like that, and developing a relationship that my emotions and my big feelings are not okay, and that they are something that are not welcome, and there's something to squash down, push away, cut off. And as a result, when I was a child and I would have some big feelings come up, then I had a belief that I couldn't handle them because they were too big and bad. And so I wanted to offload them to a parent. And that was usually my mum. And this pathway developed that when a concerning thought that was driven by some feeling came up in me that I perhaps couldn't resolve immediately, and it had an uncomfortable feeling to it, is that my habit then transposed into my relationship of being either emotionally reactive very quickly, but also the point where I found that this becomes somewhat toxic is I start seeing my partner as the threat that could evoke these uncomfortable big feelings. And so either overtly, like subtly or straight out, I'll be looking to actually try to manipulate her and control her in a way where I'm not going to likely be in the position where I feel these uncomfortable feelings that I never was role modeled how to sit with, or I didn't work it out myself. And so when I sat with that, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And, when you have one of those aha moments that drop in, and then you can kind of see it, um, chain reaction reverberate back down the line where it's affected and impacted you across your lifetime and across different relationships. I kind of had one of those moments, and it was at that point where she gave me the second half of it, which is what happens is you feel the big feeling, right? And you wanna come to me and tell me this thing that's concerning you about our relationship that you think is bad for it, or that it could be a deal breaker, or you want to run away. Maybe we're not in alignment because of this thing. And instead of bringing it to me straight away, you sit with it. And what you do when you sit with it is, number one, you realize that it's possible to sit with any big feeling that you have. Firstly, that's the permission and the possibility and the belief that opens up first. And then secondly, where's the charge behind it? What's bringing what's been triggering? What is uncomfortable about it? What's maybe happened in the past if you're that way inclined, and having the courage and the wisdom as the adult self to sit with this feeling that's oftentimes stemming from a childlike place. And instead of having an automatic pathway of the adult saying, no, I'm not going to help you with that. We don't do that. And kind of replicating that impression that the child got, that caused that anxiety around emotions in the first place. And instead going, slowing down, taking a breath instead of reactive straight away. And firstly, I say to myself, this is my responsibility, how I'm feeling. And what I do then is as a result of that, I take the other person out of any type of blame situation. They're simply bringing me some kind of stimuli. Another person who doesn't have this challenge, that what was said might just slip straight through them with no concern and set off no alarms. For me, it's brought something up, and here's the service that person is being for me, is that I am limited or stuck in some way that is blocking the fuller expression of my life, and ultimately freedom and sovereignty inside myself, because there's something I'm protecting here because it's uncomfortable. I create that new connotation which is, and granted in a loving connection where I have trust and safety with my partner. Secondly, I say, this person's not actually trying to attack me or be malevolent. So in some way, I can find some space for gratitude, because I've been reactive. And so there's a point here for me to come more into consciousness with myself, more into awareness that I have this pattern that is seeking to control other people. It's something that is maybe causing anxiety in me, and I'll kind of walk around on crutches in a way, unconsciously protecting the little field where this thing doesn't want to be provoked. And I want to be free. I want to be emotionally mature. I want to be in emotional mastery of myself. And so what I'll do is I will feel the trigger, and everybody knows what it's like. It feels like you're dying. It's intense, and you don't want to sit with that feeling. And so responses I might have done in the past is I will try to deflect a blame, shame, or guilt that I feel. I'll be like, I don't want that to land on me. That's going to trigger the thing and it's going to be uncomfortable. Another method might be to try to make the other person wrong. Well, you shouldn't have brought that to me, or why don't you sit with it, or whatever it might be, applying a manipulation of sorts, because I'm trying to protect this little field that I don't want to step in, because it feels like it's really painful, or it's full of landmines. Or I might become aggressive. I might hope that if I'm scary, she will back off. There's a whole bunch of coping mechanisms around what essentially could be seen as wounding or trauma, or just never feeling like that part was worthy of being sat with or allowed or welcome in the internal environment. And then so once I sit with that and I work it out, and it could just be an internal process, I'll just breathe for a bit and just wait for that charge to dissipate, and which allows more insight and wisdom to come in. Or I might communicate, hey, look, this is a triggering topic for me, and I would love the opportunity to sit with it for a bit and work out what it's about, and come back to you once I've thought it through and felt into what's going on, and I'll be able to let you know when I'm able to come back online in a way, or show up in a way that I want to, in a way that's present and respectful, because this is this is knocking me around. The third step from there, once that's been sat with and assured and allowed, and that kind of inner soothing of that inner child part that for the longest time up until that point has kind of been pushed down, out and away, and sort of, you're not okay and you cause trouble when you come up, and that kind of talk to the little child. If there is some helpful thing that can be brought to my partner at that point, then by all means bring it. But it'll be brought without the charge now, because I have taken responsibility for the charge that came up. And rather than applying those reactive, manipulative techniques, I am actually saying, like, you know what? This came up and I didn't like the way that you spoke with me, and it brought this up, and I'd love to talk with you about it. Or, something like that, where there is this presence. I wouldn't even necessarily say calmness, because you can kind of fake calmness but be seething underneath. I would say that there's more energy and presence available. And what I have witnessed with these interactions, and especially with women, is there is that she will have a visceral gauge on how energetically present I am. Like, really clearly can pick it up and reflect it back to me in real time. And if I'm not present, there's a higher likelihood that there's going to be tension and upset in the interaction. But if I have sat with this, worked out the charge, worked through the charge, and then come back to the conversation in a present and considered way, there is like in my personal experience, there is like a relief that occurs. There's a trust and a safety, because it's like the more I can amp up the presence, because when I'm triggered, my presence wants to leave my body. And that's where the lack of trust and safety feeling can come at a primal level. But the more present that I am, the more I'm able to be back connected with my heart again. And I can say, I'm here. This is what happened. And I can reconnect with the love that I have for her outside of that one situation, rather than feeling like I chuck all the love away because I'm out of safety and I'm out of trust now, and you're the threat, and all of these stories that come up. And that's what I return to, and the heart is able to come back online. We can have the conversation if there's any sort of value piece, or if it was just that I needed to work through something and take responsibility for it, then she's like, yeah, okay. And I love this, because I'm not turning her into my counselor. I'm not whinging about or complaining or justifying why, oh, you did this, and so, it brought this up, and blah, 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 and kind of try to like pull her, whether it's intentional or not, but it can tend to pull her into that counseling or mothering role, which is, as you know, is not that great for the polarity between the two. And you're definitely stepping out of king mode, when that is the way that it goes. And it goes that way so oftentimes for myself and for men, when there's just that desire for help, like, help me, I'm having big feelings, help, as opposed to, I'm having big feelings and I'm gonna take responsibility for it, and I'm gonna sit with it, and I'm gonna work it out myself, and I'm gonna come back to you resolved and clarified, and we'll move forward from there. And it's like, oh, thank God, for not pulling me into that person that has to fill that emotional responsibility gap or shortcoming for you.
I had a conversation with a woman friend today, and what we brought up was, ironically, like, our family from before World War II, like parents and grandparents, they grew up basically, especially here in the United States, they grew up in a culture where you didn't talk feelings at all. You basically weren't allowed to complain or talk about yourself. Like my father, it took me years after he died to start to remember that he never expressed any feelings whatsoever. I didn't even know anything about his childhood. And my mother was the same way. My mother never said a word about her mother. I didn't even know my grandmother. So what's funny is something changed maybe in the 60s, the free love, the find yourself, the more alternative spirituality came in, and then men began to kind of claim their emotions and their feelings. And so we had this pendulum over here of repression, and then it's begun to swing way over here where we've got men who don't know how to be men. I mean, they're becoming more effeminate, and they're really dumping their feelings out like women. And so I think we got to find this place right here, and that's why I like this topic, because it's a real tool that men who want to be awake and who want to have authentic relationships with a woman, you really need to learn this skill.
Yeah, I mean, if I really have experienced what you experienced. I swung the pendulum to the point where I was just pouring out my poor me about not being emotionally responsible into my relationships, and it was quite destructive. I didn't realize it. I thought I was doing the right thing by saying how um, ineffective and disempowered I felt by these unresolved emotional situations in myself, by under the guise of giving transparency to my partner. But little did I know that she's sitting there going like, sort it out, man. Like, take this isn't for me to sort out. Like, I want you to show up capable. I want of yourself, like as a standard. Adaptive techniques are really beneficial on the way to emotional mastery. And a key point of this emotional responsibility working is that both people do it. It is not just the man's responsibility to step into some kind of perfected state that's never shook. I mean, that's great if he can. I mean, that's gonna. If it's genuine, it's a great aspiration. The ultimate thing here is that men and women both have their wounding in this reality of where trauma is almost unavoidable. There are different ways that we've learned to cope, and emotionality is one of the big ones that's been demonized. And as when parents are working full-time jobs, or they have their own stuff that's unresolved, or whatever cocktail it is, big emotions are there are ways that there are ways that are worked out to shut that down quick smart, because parents have got to get a child in the car and to a place a lot of the time, or they've got to this or that. And so like they do the best that they can. And it's then as our responsibility, whenever we work out that there is a disowned relationship with emotions, to heal that, to look at that. And so I find if this is fundamental, both people need to look at themselves and do their work so that this commitment is made to each other. Hey, look, I know that I get a bit volatile or that I get emotional. I see that that's a thing now. That's probably creating less trust and safety in our relationship than more. So both people say, let's both look at that. And when that commitment is there, and these basic principles are understood of, big feeling comes up, I can sit with it, I can work it out, I can resolve the charge. You know that you've resolved the charge, because when you come to the other person, you don't go, you're never doing the dishes. When the charge has been resolved, it's like, hey, I've noticed that I am doing the dishes probably about 80% of the time, and that's okay. Is it possible for you to blah blah blah, or it's not okay? Are we able to balance it to 50-50 or something like that? And the conversation can happen with the emotional charge resolved, which is why I keep using these two terms, trust and safety, because all of a sudden there becomes over time, there becomes a reduction of this feeling of walking on eggshells, or that this person's going to just like blow up or like sniper me out of nowhere. And that then is this notion that we're in a relationship to be a safe place for each other, not to actually feel like we're doing battle with our partner. And when we take emotional responsibility, I find that to be massively foundational to actually creating that trust and safety that allows for that depth and the heart to really be open a lot more of the time, and that presence and affection and bonding to take place. It's just not as jagged.
Looking at one's triggers, what seems to happen because of our trauma or whatever our past experiences are, what happens is they just come up like you're not aware that they were there, and then boom, it's there. And if you're not prepared, there's a great line in the Tao Te Ching that I like, and it says something about be as careful as a warrior in enemy territory, be as cautious as a man covering an walking across an ice covered stream. It's this attitude of, well, we call it mindfulness, but especially in relationship, and I really want to master this. I don't want to keep having these triggers come out of nowhere and just blindside me. So would you talk about your experience or what your insights are about what we can do about triggering?
Yeah, it's a great question. And out of those two examples of walking across an icy stream and having the presence of a warrior in battle, the thing that really, when I imagine myself in those situations, it is very, very focused presence. The noise reduces. It's like bring all your parts in and focus. And the first thing I think around, and first off, I just want to say, look, I'm not perfect at this. It's a journey towards mastery. And the big kind of disclaimer I want to give here, or the allowance, the adjustment, the grace, is that if this commitment is there from both people to practice self-responsibility around big emotions and feelings, and you are doing it and you are getting runs on the board. Sorry, it's an Australian cricket term, but you're clocking up home runs around this, and you're like, wow, this person is really holding themselves and really taking responsibility so that there's more room for love and connection in our relationship, and I don't have to mother or father this person anymore. Yeah, and they're really holding themselves to account. And then there's an occasional loss of that mastery, or that person experiences a trigger that's bigger than the container that they're building, that's in an ever expanding way, and they just get blindsided by it. Well, let me tell you, it is so much easier to have grace, patience, understanding, and compassion and empathy in that situation, because you've got this feeling of, you know what, like 80-90% of the time, they are really caring for themselves and caring for me and caring for our connection. And the trust and safety that comes from that, you're like, you know what, I got you. I got you in this. And if there's some daggers being thrown or something, or like something hurts a bit, you're like, then that ability to hold that person while they're having their meltdown is vastly more structurally sound. And there is a real patience there, because you realize that you're serving this person because they're coming into an awareness of a place that they're not in mastery, and that they're not to be attacked for that, and that it's going to be okay. And when I stay non-reactive, and you might know this as well, if I'm able to stay in love and be non-reactive, it passes through like 10 times quicker than if I engage in it and start saying, oh, well, don't talk to me like that. Like, I don't deserve that. Or, like, why are you being so psycho? Or, whatever it might be, that is that kind of pulling me into the drama.
Well, to add to that, um, what's really interesting that I've observed is these problems are only in my life, for instance, they're only a real issue in a relationship that I am attracted to a woman. Like I'm a potential partner or somebody I'm interested in, and you're wanting to connect. Now, if it's just a friendship where there's not that element of, are they a potential partner? I don't, the triggering is almost, so it's a psychological, very strange thing that as soon as we decide I'm interested in this person, I want to develop a relationship with them, I want to be connected to them, that for some reason the triggering sensitivity begins to be a little more like
Oh, yeah.
this,
Yeah. Yeah, I think ultimately we want to belong to somebody. I think ultimately we want to have a divine union with them. And when we're seeking to belong to somebody and have divine union, we have these connection points that we're looking to have with them. And so there can be morphing, ducking, and weaving to work out how we can fit with that. And then it brings up and triggers that self-abandonment coping mechanism where there is like a contortionist effect to try to fit into the box that we're perceiving is in front of us, and that's its own journey towards self-understanding and mastery as well.
If you don't get that self mastery within yourself and say, I don't give a flying rat's ass what anybody thinks, I'm going to be true to myself. That's a big leap for a lot of men, especially nowadays, because we don't have fathers, we don't have male role models of men who could contain their own space and their own presence, and men, you and I, have really talked about this a lot. We need other men to help us be better with women.
Yeah, that's a big topic. And what comes up for me is this importance of aligning head with heart with cock. And when these places are consciously integrated with and reclaimed, then there is a truer compass that's activated, and the behavior tends to come less from desperation or like with that kind of integration, the man understands like I'm good where I stand, and there is a building of that self-acceptance and um like that self-mastery, that competency in one's own life. And for one to, like, turning 40 has been the biggest right angle turn in my life. I've shifted from receiving life to actually creating life now. And that is huge because I felt like when I received life that I wasn't empowered. I think power, a feeling of being empowered comes into it as well, is if there's a disempowerment program running, then there will be these adaptive strategies to want to um, attract and keep someone. And when there is a growing feeling of empowerment, then there is this sense of giving oneself back to themselves. And when that's done regularly, it's like, well, that's the most important connection. That's the one that I devote to and I'm dedicated to. And it helps to heal this giving myself away to somebody else first rather than giving myself to myself first. I really see serious relating, or this devotion to divine union, if that's the way that a person is inclined, and they're not doing their casual dating anymore, and they find someone that they, can cultivate that trust and safety with. And it's like, I am geared to go deep, and they find their person. I think it's really important to have external support networks available, because without that, there's a tendency to want to make each other the counselor, which for me has been ultimately destructive, because I bleed my heart out to my partner and they're just like, nah, that's not a turn on for me. And so I have found both to be my own support. So as we've spoken about, there's the modality, the compassion keys that I use, both on myself and with clients now. But I'll go to a men's group once a week, and I'll be in touch with these men, and we have an agreement that we're available for a phone call if there's some low feelings, low morale, or there's a flip out or something like that's happening. So both, I think both the willingness to have some professional support, to have some male support. It's really important, speaking personally from a male perspective, to have that grounding time with other men, and at varying levels of where you're ready for it, to have a network where you have those contacts with men that are willing to call you out, to go, hey, I think there's a blind spot here, rather than it needing to be the partner all the time. Just is a part of that self-responsibility mantra that I am taking, which is I want to free up the space in my connection for as much love, bonding, and truth and honesty as possible. So what responsibility do I need to take, understanding that I've not been a tribally initiated man who has been taught the fundamentals to have me transition out of boyhood into manhood? I've not received many of those initiations. The men, when I was growing up, didn't role model those self-responsible behaviors. So it's my responsibility now. I can't whinge about it not being somebody else showing up for me. I've got to show up for myself. That's just the reality of where I find myself. That seems to be the only reasonable conclusion towards the fulfillment that I'm seeking and the reduction of suffering. So having support is really important, and having an openness to support is actually honoring the devotion to the relationship. And I feel really lit up in the heart around that, because I am there, choosing to be there for myself, and I'm also choosing to light up my relationship with my partner by extricating that heaviness or that burden or that lack of responsibility. I'm not lumping that onto her, which increases that polarity, which allows me to be more present, because I know, like in the background, I know that if I get depressed or if I feel some big meltdown coming on that I haven't expanded the capacity to handle yet, that my system goes, oh yeah, I've got that, and that outlet that's available like that. If I find that I reach a limit of my self capacity and self responsibility to hold myself, and there's a kind of a settling that happens in the system there. It's like, I know it's available if I need it. And that, to me, is in stark contrast to, I'm all alone. If any big feelings come up, I'm going to freak out because I'm ostracized from my emotional body. Everybody needs to like act in a really calm way around me and not like provoke me in this myriad of hidden ways. And I could blow up at any time, and just that old school kind of stoic male kind of situation. I think that's the evolution and the chance at more happiness that our lineage is kind of cheering for us to be at, I think.
This makes me think about the way modern relationship couple therapy has changed. For the longest time, when couples were having trouble, it was acceptable to go to a marriage counselor or a relationship counselor. And what I never understood, and statistically, they have proven now after many years of promoting this that couples therapy very rarely works. And the reason is, what I've learned is because when a man and a woman or a husband wife, go to a therapist, the therapist is there. The couple is not the client. It is the relationship that is the client. And if you go for couples therapy, the therapist's goal is to fix the relationship. And what they've learned over time now is that sometimes this person is not good for this person and vice versa. And so now I'm hearing more and more as I've studied this, is that the advice coming from psychotherapists and marriage counselors is, why did you pick that person? Why are you in that relationship with that person? And that is a really provocative question, because it's making us look at the patterns and the traumas and the childhood wounding and a whole myriad of past things that is causing us to attract the people who are not right for us. Like Kalia LaRoche says very clearly, we are attracted to what we are familiar with. And if we're familiar with parents who abandoned us or emotionally neglected us, then we're going to be attracted to partners who do the same thing. So I'm seeing a big change in the whole world of therapy, and it's coming back once again to what you're talking about, is this emotional mastery. We have to do that work ourselves. We can't be looking for a partner that has all of the bells and whistles and the things that we are attracted to. We got to really start, and I like how Kalia says it, is we have to start making the unfamiliar familiar. And that's something that has to be done within the individual. And it's a spiritual path. I mean, there's no way around it. It isn't a spiritual path.
I think divine union was set up in this reality to be the ultimate fail-safe backdoor to the program. And I think that no matter how distorted a reality becomes, divine union was supposed to be the fail-safe, because like the way that I see it is they're like two very, very strong magnets that are seeking to come together, that magnetic attraction that we feel. And the distortion of the programming that is vast, like there's a lot of layers and complicated strategy required to have God forget itself in order to have a human experience. And we're unraveling that like an onion to return back to our remembering of who we really are. But these two magnets, like the distorted programming of what we get from our lineage and our DNA, and then cultural programming, societal programming, trauma, all that kind of stuff, is like lots of layers of bubble wrap around the magnets. And so we have this magnetic desire to merge, but the bubble wrap's like, you can't get close enough. So the reason I say it's like a fail-safe backdoor is we then inevitably are required to look at ourselves to understand, what is this inhibitor to merging? What's this bubble wrap? And so we'll hit up against each other constantly and constantly. It's like, why can't I get close enough in a way that's proper nourishing? Why am I starving for this connection? And whether it takes lifetimes or this lifetime, it's like, okay, I've got to, and it starts with self-responsibility. I've got to take responsibility for my bubble wrap. You take responsibility for your bubble wrap, and we will do our best to work through the layers in order to have this divine union. And that then is, going to handle any type of distortion. But the reality is, like, trauma ain't no joke, like when you're affected by it, it's some of the biggest stuff we'll ever deal with in a lifetime. And then there can be trauma from other lifetimes even, I've discovered. So, it's really effective catalyst for an experience that we are choosing to gather and have. And that's why I think that support is so important for self and external, for people to consider, because it's tough when it feels like it falls apart.
Well, sacred relationship is not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that. This was a great talk. I'm so grateful you came on today and shared everything that you offered. And before we wrap it up, I'd like you to talk about your compassion keys. You've been certified in this and you're offering your services. And I'll put a link in the description box if anybody wants to, book a schedule with you, an appointment with you. You're in Australia, but people can PayPal it or something, right? And I'll tell you, I had that session done with Steve, and it was remarkable for me. I broke through a lot of stuff that I wouldn't have gotten through otherwise. So would you just talk about it a little bit?
Yeah, thank you. So compassion keys is like a trauma block and limiting pattern clearing technique. I effectively hold a space whereby self-directed compassion is utilized by the adult self of the client and directed to the part that is feeling wounded or traumatized. And it has a very acknowledging effect for that part, which is oftentimes in opposition to the way that it's treated, which is, I don't want to know about it. It's too painful. I don't want to go there. I've just got to get on with my life and live my life. This provides a really safe space where somebody, myself, a man, is present, is able to really provide a safe environment for somebody to go into any type of trauma that they've perhaps not felt self-supported to go into, and to do that with that guidance that allows a person to actually go deeply into some of this really tough terrain, and I help with childhood trauma. I go into sexual trauma, whether it be with a past partner or from childhood. There's really it's really a great coverall for any type of traumatic experience. And what is wonderful about that is that it tends to reduce the charge around unproductive or unresourceful behaviors that are expressing themselves in life and impacting things negatively, because it takes it back to the root and addresses it. And I've even had clients slip into past lives and we've cleared stuff there as well. So it's a phenomenal practice based on self-directed compassion. And I love it because it has a mental alleviating effect, but it also engages the body. So it has that somatic integration as well. So I work online exclusively, so I can work with time zones anywhere around the world. And it's really good. And it, like I said earlier, it's like an onion, it's um, you can have one session that's absolutely possible, like we've had, and your system will tend to bring the kind of a central core thing for breakthrough on the first session, and then with multiple sessions, the system gains more trust and allowing. And if there's a desire for multiple sessions, we can go deeper and deeper again as well. So, yeah, I'm really stepping into that, and I'll be getting my socials set up in the coming weeks as well, or coming week, to talk a little bit more about what I offer and what I do, so people can be getting a really clear understanding and referring it to people that might pop up in their mind when they think about this stuff as well. I may be working on a course, because I think a lot of the things that I've discussed in this talk with you can be revelations for people or new insights. And I think there would be a great value in being able to put it in just a brief, succinct course. So that may be coming, but yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. My Instagram is steve.heart, as in the organ, .liberation. So I might send that over to you to include in the comments as well.